You're yogis too? That's good. From Russia?
Russia and Croatia.
Russia, oh, Croatia. I spent a lot of time in Croatia. Zagreb and Rijeka. You're from Zagreb. Very nice. You know Sundarananda? No? Okay. So much for that question. All right, we'll chant, and then we'll talk about Lord Varaha, whose appearance day it is today. So, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parabhadacharya, also tell us that Shrimad is divine grace. Abhaya Charana, Dvadashi, Goswami Mahashila Prabhupada. ISKCON, founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananda Goti, Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Rem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govardhana Sayam Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhana ki jai. Vrindavanam ki jai. Machuram ki jai. Jagannath Swami ki jai. Yamunamai ki jai. Shrimati Lasi Devi ki jai. Samveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Hari. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ganatu Radhasha Gananjana Shalakya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So for those of you who don't know who Lord Varaha is, Krishna has many different incarnations. He incarnates in every species of life. That's quite interesting. As we mentioned yesterday, Krishna is called Rasa Raj. He enjoys different relationships and different tastes of relationships. So therefore, to enjoy everything, he should experience everything. Like if you want to enjoy being a tiger, you should take birth as a tiger. If you want to enjoy being a lion, be a lion. If you want to be a boar is a big pig, then you have to take birth, or you have to appear as a boar. So Krishna wants to enjoy that particular, what we call rasa, or a taste. So that's why he has incarnations in every species of life. And some of you might be familiar with Lord Nrsimha, who is half man, half lion. And then Krishna appears in the human species as Lord Ram, and then of course Krishna's original form is Krishna and Braj playing the flute with two arms. So this is the nature of the absolute. The Brahma Samhita states that they're unlimited forms, but they're all the same person. Just like a famous actor may play different roles in different circumstances. In one sense, an actor may play the role of a robber or a policeman or a prime minister. He could do anything. And sometimes actors even play the form of animals. So Krishna's like that too. He's a dramatic actor and he enjoys doing different things. So that's really the reason behind this particular incarnation we're going to talk about today, who is known as Lord Boar. And boar, as I mentioned before, is a pig with tusks on him. You know, wild pig. So the story is as follows. Once upon a time, first we're going to talk about Lord, a demon's parents before we start talking about Lord Boar himself. Because Krishna also comes down to kill demons, help the devotees, and establish religious principles. That's the Bhagavad Gita teaches us this. So he has many purposes, both what we call esoteric and exoteric. The exoteric purposes means, saving people, killing demons, teaching different things, teaching religious principles or dharma. And esoteric means like his own enjoyment, what he does. Like we mentioned last night, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has his esoteric reason for appearance to understand Radharani's mood and to see himself from the perspective of Radharani, who's his best devotee. So, but exoterically, apparently, he comes to teach Krishna Nam Sankirtan, the chanting of Krishna's names. So there's always these two purposes. The purpose that everybody knows, and then God's own personal purpose. So remember, with Lord Boar, the personal purpose was to enjoy swimming as a boar. And so the exoteric, or the purpose that everybody knows about, we'll read about and hear about in a second. So once upon a time, as the story goes, there were two Prajapatis. Now Prajapatis are people who have a lot of children and they populate the universe at the time of the creation, right after the creation. Like when the material world was created, there's no one. Not a single person except for Lord Brahma, who pops out of Lord Vishnu. And so somehow or other you got to fill up this place. And so Lord Brahma has different people who do that, sort of like the Adam and Eve of the creation. And these are called Prajapatis. And some of these Prajapatis, they have many children. And some of these Prajapatis have non-human children. Because you got to have non-humans too at the same time. You have humans, you got to have plants, you got to have everything together. Just like they say, what came first, the chicken or the egg? So it's hard to figure that one out. So you got to have everything simultaneously. Like if you just had human beings here with no broccoli, you'd be in trouble. Isn't it? You just put the human beings here, nothing to eat, huh? Then they have to eat each other. I mean, that's not a good proposal. So that's what the Prajapatis do. There's many Prajapatis. One's name is Daksha. He was quite expert, made a few mistakes. But anyway, he had a lot of children. So you have these two. Diti is one of the Prajapatis, and you have Kashyapa. Kashyapa has more than one. Kashyapa is the man's name. And he has more than one wife, actually several. We're not prescribing that. Not a good idea. So, and he has one wife who gave birth to a bunch of snakes. And don't ask me how they do it. And he has another wife who gave birth to birds. And he has wives who gave birth to what we call demigods, and another wife who gave birth to demons. So wife who gave birth to the demigods, that means God's assistants, basically. It doesn't mean God, it just means people who are very powerful, controlling different aspects of the creation, like the CEO of a particular corporation, or the members of the board, or something like that. So, the wife that gave birth to the chairman, the members of the board, the good guys in the universe, let's just say good guys, is Aditi. And the lady who gave birth to the bad guys, or bad entities, is Diti. And also there's another one who gave birth to bad guys. That's Danu. But anyway, I can go through the whole list of the bad and good mothers. But the main thing is that today we're going to talk about Diti, who gave birth to a race of entities called Daityas, which are bad guys. Basically that means bad guys in Sanskrit. So the Daityas came from Diti. Okay. So here is Kashyapa, the husband. And he has these wives who gave birth to bad guys, wives who gave birth to good guys. And Diti, at this particular story goes, as the story goes, she really wants to have a kid. Now, nothing wrong with that. We have nothing against children. I mean, I guess we were all once children, right? Maybe I wasn't, but the rest of you were. Anyway, so she wants a kid. But there's a whole science of having children. I don't mean you go to the laboratory and just like you have a test tube baby or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. There is a science of when the parents should have sex so that the proper child is born, because there's different influences in the universe at different times. That's the way life is. There's modes of nature, there's different planets. Some of you may have heard of the Rahu planet, which is not auspicious. There's eclipses, which are not considered auspicious. So there's subtle influences. So if the parents conceive a child during a time of negative subtle influences, there's every chance the child's going to be, like Donald Trump. Anyway, so forget about that. I had to slip that one. I'm not going to mention any other politician from Russia, believe me. I'm already in trouble. So they may not let me back in America. So there's every chance you're going to get a loser as a kid. And if you have the child, the parents are having impregnation, when it's an auspicious time, the right time, there's every chance you're going to have a really saint. Because there's this whole principle of nature. People are born with different natures. And in the Vedic culture, there's a horoscope done. When a child's born, you can determine their nature. Prabhupada, my spiritual master, had a horoscope done when he was born. And the astrologer said that when he was 70 years old, he was going to cross an ocean and open up 108 temples. It's interesting, isn't it? The astrologer predicted that, and exactly that's what happened. When he was 70, he crossed the ocean on a freighter, and they opened up 108 temples. So it's pretty good. So, but don't worry, even if you were born in a really bad way, if your astrologer said, when you're 20, you're going to kill a bunch of people or whatever, there's still hope. Because there's another thing called nurture. In other words, nurture means that your nature can be adjusted after you're born through the proper association. Or your nature can be brought down through improper association. Krishna himself, and this is related to the story, had a son who had good qualities, and that son later on turned out to be a real, rascal. And Krishna himself had to just wipe him out. But that's related to this Varaha story, which we'll tell. So, anyway, so there's these two people, and she really wants to have a kid, and she says, I gotta have a kid, I got a kid. And he's saying, let's wait for an auspicious time, sweetie. And then, I'm putting it in modern words anyway. And he says, no. And she said, now! And so at a very inauspicious time, they have their relationship, impregnation. And he says, well, he does actually a pre-birth horoscope, which is even better than a horoscope at birth. Because you can actually do a horoscope at the time of impregnation. And he says, guess what? Your kids are going to be demons. And they're going to be killed by God. And she's really upset with this. Really upset. Okay, so then fast forward, whatever months later for demigods. And the interesting thing for these higher living entities, the kids, they're not actually born as babies. Actually, they're full grown, or at least right after birth. They're full grown. So the kids, so what happens is the kids come out. She has two really nice kids, or not so nice kids. Their names are Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyaksha basically means, Hiranya means gold. So someone who's they both have Hiranya in their name. Like if you ever saw some of these James Bond movies, Goldfinger or something like that. Anyway. So, and then Hiranyakashipu means gold bed. So they're both very much into just wealth, exploitation of people, and self-centeredness. So Hiranyakashipu is another story that happens after this story. It's not part of today's celebration. But we'll talk about Hiranyaksha, the younger brother. Aksha means eye. So Hiranyaksha means gold eye. An eye for gold. And Hiranyakashipu's brother means gold bed. Means someone just likes gold and just like enjoy whatever, the body in bed. And so, at least Hiranyaksha was more pious. Only had gold eye. So what he did was he harassed people in the universe and everything like that. And basically it's described, in some cases, that he disturbed the floating of the earth. And there's, at the bottom of the universe, there's this ocean. Now, when we talk about ocean, we're not talking about, the water like we have. Here it's a far more subtle energy. Some people think, when they talk about the Govardhana Ocean, it's just like the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean or Mediterranean or something like that. But this is different. It's just different. It's different. What does it mean? Ocean, but it is an ocean. Anyway, it's the Govardhana Ocean. And the earth falls down into this energy field called the Govardhana Ocean. And so Krishna wants to figure out how to lift the earth up and also take care of this demon simultaneously. So, let's go back a little bit before we start talking about this story. Who are these two people who appeared, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu? They were actually devotees of Krishna from the spiritual world. And they had been cursed to come down to this world because Krishna wanted to have a good fight. And the reason Krishna wanted to have a good fight is in the spiritual world there's no good fights. Everything is just like love and peace. Little arguments, but yeah, everything's But anyway, it's not exactly like hippies there, but it's love, peace, brother, sister, and you have arguments, but it's it's nothing really serious. You get together at the end of the day and just make up. But Krishna really likes to enjoy. We mentioned this last night, rus. And so one of the rus is anger. Another one is ghastliness. Ghastliness basically means yuck. Something, anyway, something so horrifying Like if King Kong comes and attacks you, or what else? Godzilla. What other thing? Gasoline?
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, yeah. Yeah, that's better, because you would all remember Darth Vader. The dark side of the Force. Or the Emperor Palpatine. You know the Emperor Palpatine? Anyone know who that is? No? Nobody here watches Star Wars? Good. Got some pious people here. So anyway, he's really gruesome. So Krishna likes to enjoy these different experiences. We mentioned yesterday, for those who weren't here, that sometimes people like to get scared, so they go to the amusement park and they go on a roller coaster, or they go to a centrifuge and they get pressed against the wall, with 5Gs, because it's fun. I don't know if it's fun, but anyway, sometimes people think it's fun. Or when I was young, we go into the House of Horrors. You get in this car and it takes you into this place where the ghosts jump at you.
The haunted house.
Haunted house, yeah, haunted house. And it's fun. It's scary. You get skeleton, you go around the corner and the skeleton goes, ah, to you. And so, but Krishna's like that. Everything that we like to do, God likes to do too. Because why should he be deprived? How did we get the desire to do anything unless it was actually originally present in Krishna? But with us, it's based on, self-centeredness, it's not love, we just want to somehow or other exploit. But with Krishna, it's all based upon loving exchanges. So when Krishna wants to have a serious fight, he wants to have a serious fight with his devotees. He doesn't like to have a fight with just like some ordinary old, demon. So he has his devotees come down and become demons so he could fight with them. So this Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha actually were two devotees who Krishna wanted to come down. Their names before were Jai and Vijay. And they were cursed actually to take these births as demons and then come back to the spiritual world. So how they were cursed, that's a whole different story we don't have time for right now. So what happened, yes, they were taking 3 births as demons in this material world. And for those who want to know which demons they were Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. They were Kumbhakarna and Ravana, and Shishupal and Dantavakra. Some of you may remember them. And then they took a birth really as good devotees, Jagai and Madai, and Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And just some other time we'll tell you the story about all these 3 things. So when they were both born, there were so many inauspicious omens, like earthquakes, and jackals would howl, and milk would give blood cows would give blood instead of milk. The deities would cry, and the planets would go in retrograde, backwards. That happens sometimes, and that's when there's a war. And Hiranyaksha, there's more to tell about the story with Hiranyaksha. When Hiranyaksha was young, that's Goldeye, he went to the heaven, and with his club, he used to fight with the demigods, the real powerful people there. And he even went to one demigod named Varuna, and Varuna said, "We're too old to fight. Better you fight with Vishnu." And he asked Narada Muni, who was a great sage, "Where can I find Vishnu? Where can I find Krishna and Vishnu the same?" And Narada said, "Hey, he's in this energy field, the ocean. The Govardhana ocean is called." And so he goes there and he sees Vishnu with the earth, lifting the earth up from this Govardhana ocean. And he says to Vishnu, who's taking the form of a boar at this particular point, because a boar goes down sometimes into dirty places. He has these different tusks to pick things up. He says to Vishnu, "The earth belongs to us, not to you, Vishnu." And Vishnu, as Lord Boar, places the earth on the water, the energy field there, and they begin to fight back and forth. And we can read some of the details of the fight in a second.
Please don't go wrong because I accidentally moved somebody to argue with. That one.
Okay. So, you're all finished?
Well, there's
almost. Or you're going to go in the other room and talk. So, they begin to fight, and during the fight, Lord Brahma, who's like the head of this whole universe under Vishnu, says, you better stop playing with him. Because Vishnu, or Lord Bor, is having a good time playing with this demon. That's why he came down. It's like a cat playing with a mouse. Have you ever seen a cat? They catch a mouse, and they don't just catch a mouse and eat it. They let the mouse go, then they catch him again, and let him go and catch him again. And they have fun in that way. Poor mouse is not having fun. But the Lord, that is Lord Bor, wants to have fun. So he basically, the demon drops his club, and Lord Varaha says, pick it up. He wants to have a fair fight. It's called chivalry, which is one of the indirect rasas. And then they go back and forth, throwing things at each other, and then eventually, after some fighting with a production of stones and pus and hair and stool and naked people, Krishna slaps him on the root of his ear, and he dies. And so that's the end of that Lord, not the Lord Bor, that's the end of Hiranyaksha. So what I wanted to do is read some of the verses from the Bhagavatam that describe this pastime. And I have that right here. So now you know the pastime, summary of the pastime. And I'm going to read some of this. All right, here. So here is Lord Brahma speaking. While I have been engaged in the process of creation, the earth has been inundated by a deluge, that's a flood, and has gone down into the depths of the ocean. What can we do who are engaged in this matter of creation? It is best to let the Almighty Lord direct us. And all of a sudden, while Brahma was engaged in thinking, and this is how the Lord appeared as the boar, a small form of a boar came out of his nostril. The measurement of the creature was not more than the upper portion of the thumb. And while Brahma was observing him, that boar became situated in the sky in a wonderful manifestation, as gigantic as a great elephant. Struck with wonder at observing the wonderful boar-like form in the sky, all the Brahmanas, like Marichi, as well as the Kumaras and Manu, began to argue in various ways. Is this some extraordinary entity come in the pretense of a boar? It is very wonderful that he has come from my nose. When Krishna appears, he can appear any way he wants. He can come from Lord Brahma's nose. He can come from the womb of the mother. He can descend from the sky, or he can just appear because he's independent. One of the natures of God is that he is aptakama. He gets whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants, however he wants. First of all, this is Lord Brahma speaking. This boar was seen no bigger than the tip of the thumb, and within a moment he was as large as the stone. My mind is perturbed, Lord Brahma is saying. Is he the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu? So while Brahma was thinking in this way, Vishnu roared tumultuously like a great mountain. And he enlivened Lord Brahma and the other demigods by roaring with his uncommon voice, which echoed in all directions. When all the other demigods heard his voice, they chanted the auspicious chants from the three Vedas. I'm summarizing some of this, I'm not reading all the translations. Playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. Before entering the water to rescue the earth, Lord Boar flew in the sky, slashing his tail, his hard hairs quivering, His very glance was luminous, and he scattered the clouds in the sky with his hooves and his glittering white tusks. He was personally the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, and he had the body of a hog. He searched after the earth by smell. His tusks were fearful, and as he glanced over the devotee Brahmanas engaged in offering prayers, he entered the water, diving into the water like a giant mountain. Lord Boar divided the middle of the ocean, and the two high waves appeared as the arms of the ocean, which cried loudly as if praying to the Lord. Lord Boar penetrated the water with his hooves, which were sharp like sharp arrows, and found the limits of the ocean. Although it was unlimited, he saw the earth, the resting place for all living entities, lying as it was in the beginning of the creation, and he personally lifted it up. Lord Boar very easily took the earth on his tusks and got it up out of the water. Thus he appeared very splendid. Then, his anger glowing like the Sudarshan wheel, he immediately killed the demon Hiranyaksha, although he tried to fight. Thereupon the Lord Boar killed the demon within the water, just as a lion kills an elephant. The cheeks and tongue of the Lord became smeared with blood of the demon, just like an elephant becomes reddish from digging in the purple earth. So this is what we call ghastliness, the rust of ghastliness, something that's really like that. Confirmed. Then the Lord, playing like an elephant, suspended the earth on the edge of his curved white tusks. He assumed the bluish complexion like that of a tabal tree, and thus the sages headed by Brahma could understand him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so there's prayers offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead here. And there's actually, the next chapter actually has further description of the fight. Let's just go a little forward here. To the next, here we go. This is actually what we call a blow-by-blow description of the fight, which is actually more interesting than just kill it. So, this portion, this portion starts with Lord Boar encountering Hiranyaksha. The proud and falsely glorious Daitya paid little heed to the words of Varuna. Oh, this is what I described before. Okay. He saw there the all-powerful personality of Godhead in his boar incarnation, bearing the earth upwards in the ends of his tusks, and robbing him of his splendor with his reddish eyes. The demon laughed. Oh, an amphibious beast. The demon addressed the Lord, O best of the demigods, dressed in the form of a boar, just hear me. This earth is entrusted to us, the inhabitants of the lower regions, and you cannot take it from my presence and not be hurt by me. And you rascal, you have been nourished by our enemies to kill us, and you have killed some demons by remaining invisible. So this is Hiranyaksha talking. O fool, your power is only mystic, so today I shall enliven my kinsmen by killing you. The demon continued to speak. This is also the voice of the demon. When you fall dead with your skull smashed by the mace hurled by my arms, the demigods and sages who offer you oblations and sacrifice and devotional service will also automatically cease to exist like trees without roots. And it's described that the Lord was pained by these words, abusive words of the demon. But seeing that the earth on the ends of his tusks was frightened, he rose out of the water just as an elephant emerges with his female companion when assailed by an alligator. The demon, who had golden hair on his head and fearful tusks, gave chase to the Lord while he was rising from the water, even as an alligator would chase an elephant. Roaring like thunder, he said, "Are you not ashamed of running away before a challenging adversary? There's nothing reproachable for a shameless creature." The Lord placed the earth on the surface of the water and transferred to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float in the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled the Lord, and the other demigods rained flowers on him. The demon, who had a wealth of ornaments, bangles, and beautiful golden armor on his body, chased the Lord from behind with his great mace. The Lord tolerated these words, but in order to reply to him, he expressed anger. The personality of God had said, "Indeed, we are creatures of the jungle, and we are searching after hunting dogs like you. One who is freed from the entanglement of death has no fear from the loose talk in which you are indulging, for you are bound up by the laws of nature. Although bitten by your powerful mace, I shall stay here in the water for some time, because having created enmity with a powerful enemy, I now have no place to go. You were supposed to be the commander of men." So he begins to insult him in different ways. We're going to skip this portion right here. The demon, thus being challenged and insulted by the personality of God, became angry and agitated, and he trembled in anger like a challenged cobra, hissing indignantly, all his senses shaken by wrath. The demon quickly sprang upon the Lord and dealt him a blow with his powerful mace. The Lord, however, by moving slightly aside, dodged the violent mace blow aimed at his breast by the enemy, just as an accomplished yogi would elude death. The personality of Godhead now exhibited his anger and rushed to meet the demon, who bit his lip in rage, took up his mace again, and began to repeatedly brandish it about. Then with his mace, the Lord struck the enemy on the right of his brow, but since the demon was expert in fighting, he protected himself by a maneuver of his own mace. In this way, the demon Hiranyaksha and the Lord, the personality of Godhead, struck each other with their own maces, each enraged and seeking his own victory. There was keen rivalry between the two combatants. Both had sustained injuries on their bodies from the blows of each other's pointed maces. So I want to explain that the Lord has a transcendental body. There's no question of him being injured. But for the sake of pastimes, he makes believe he is injured. It's described in the Upanishads that the Lord is Ashnavi Ram. He has no veins. Like you can see, I have so many veins. But the Lord has no veins. His body is Satchidananda Vigraha. Ishwara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvasa Karana Karanam. But for pastime's sake, he makes believe that he's hurt, because he wants to enjoy himself. You know, if he just sits there and just takes all these beatings and just says, "Oh, you know, die, you stupid demon," it's no fun. So, and each more and more enraged at the smell of blood in his person. No? Okay. Thank you.
I'll write you a message.
Yeah, write me a letter. In their eagerness to win, they performed. So
I have a call on.
they're going to arrange a ride for you back, or?
Yeah, they're just gonna come with me and then they'll come back.
Okay, you're going to come back. We can speak.
And I think she wanted to talk to you after class for a few minutes.
Okay, no problem.
Is that all right? And then they'll get around.
Yeah. In their eagerness to win, they performed maneuvers of various kinds, and their contest looked like an encounter between two forceful bulls for the sake of a cow. O descendant of Kuru, Brahma, the most independent demigod of the universe, accompanied by his followers, came to see the terrible fight for the sake of the world between the demon and the personality of Godhead, who appeared just like the form of a boar. After arriving at this, Brahma and all the transcendentalists saw the demon, and then they addressed Narayan, who was the boar. Lord Brahma said, "My dear Lord, this demon has proved to be a constant pinprick to the demigods, the brahmanas, the cows, and innocent persons who are spotless and always dependent upon worshiping your lotus feet. He has become a source of fear by unnecessarily harassing them. Since he has attained a boon for me, he has become a demon, always searching for a proper combatant, wandering all over the universe for this infamous purpose. Lord Brahma continued, "My dear Lord, there's no need to play with this demon, so you should kill him. My dear Lord, you are infallible. Please kill this sinful demon before the demoniac hour arrives and he presents another formidable approach favorable to him. You can kill him by your internal potency without doubt. My Lord, the darkest evening which covers this world is fast approaching. Since you are the soul of all souls, kindly kill him and win victory for the demigods. The auspicious period known as Abhijit, which is most opportune for victory, commenced at midday, but is all but past. Therefore, in the interest of your friends, please dispose of this formidable foe quickly. So Lord Brahma is very scared. And actually, even though he knows that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Lord Bor is non-different from Krishna, he's still scared that something's going to happen. And this, of course, is called Yoga Maya, that even if someone is aware that you're dealing with God, you're still fearful for him. This is part of the Lord's pastimes. And so Lord Brahma continues in this particular way. Then the Lord sprang and aimed his mace at the chin of his enemy, the Hiranyaksha demon, who was stalking fearlessly before him. Struck by the demon's mace, however, the Lord's mace slipped from his hand and however, the Lord's mace slipped from his hand and looked splendid as it fell down whirling. Even though the demon had an excellent opportunity to strike his unarmed foe without obstruction, he respected the law of single combat, thereby kindling the fury of the Lord. As the Lord's mace fell to the ground, a cry of alarm arose from the witnessing crowd of gods and sages. The personality of Godhead acknowledged the demon's love of righteousness, and therefore he invoked a Sudarshan disc. And as the discus began to resolve in the Lord's hands, and the Lord contended at close quarters with his chief of his Vaikuntha attendants, as I mentioned before, this is one of the people from the spiritual world, there issued from every direction strange expressions uttered by those who were witnessing from airplanes. They had no knowledge of the Lord's reality, and therefore they cried, "May victory attend you, pray dispatch him, play no more with him." When the demon saw the personality of Godhead, who had eyes just like lotus petals standing in the position before him, armed with a Sudarshan discus, his senses were overpowered by indignation. He began to hiss like a serpent, and he bit his lips in great resentment. The demon, who had fearful tusks, stared at the personality of Godhead as though to burn him. Springing into the air, he aimed his mace at the Lord, exclaiming at the same time, "You are slain." While his enemy looked on, the Lord in his boar form, the enjoyer of all sacrificial offerings, playfully knocked down the mace with his left foot, even as it came upon him with the force of a tempest. The Lord then said, "Take up your weapon and try again, eager as you are to conquer me." When the Lord saw the mace flying toward him, he stood firmly where he was, caught it with the same ease as Garuda, the king of birds, would seize a serpent. His valor thus frustrated, the great demon felt humiliated and was put out of countenance. He was reluctant to take back the mace when it was offered by the personality of Godhead. He now took a trident and hurled it against the Lord, the enjoyer of all sacrifices. Hurled by the mighty demon with all the strength, the flying trident shone brightly in the sky. The personality of Godhead tore it to pieces with his Sudarshan disc. The demon was enraged when his trident was cut to pieces by the discus of the personality of Godhead. And then he advanced towards the Lord and, roaring aloud, struck his hard fist. No one should be calling me now. Struck his hard fist against the Lord's broad chest, which bore the mark of Shrivats. Then he went out of sight. Hit in this manner by the demon, the Lord, who had appeared as the first boar, did not feel the least quaking in any part of his body any more than an elephant would when struck with a wreath of flowers. So the demon employed many conjuring tricks, and everyone was filled with alarm and thought that the dissolution of the universe was near. Fierce winds began to blow from all directions, spreading darkness occasioned by dust and hailstorms. Stones came in volleys from every corner as if thrown by machine guns. And there's some more descriptions about this. Just skip those. So then Krishna displayed or discharged his Sudarshan disc. At that very moment, a shudder suddenly ran through the heart of Diti, the mother of Hiranyaksha. She recalled the words of her husband Kashyapa, and blood began to flow from her breasts. When the demon saw all of his magic forces dispelled, he at once again came into the presence of the personality of Godhead, and full of rage tried to embrace him within his arms to crush him, but to his great amazement he found the Lord standing outside the circle of his arms. The demon now began to strike the Lord with his hard fists, but Lord Hokshaja slapped him at the root of the ear, even though Indra, the Lord of the Maruts, hit the demon, even as Indra, the Lord of the Maruts, hit the demon Vritra. Though struck indifferently by the Lord, the conqueror of all, the demon's body began to wheel. His eyeballs bulged out of their sockets, pretty ghastly. His arms and legs broken, and the hair on his head scattered. He fell down dead like a gigantic tree uprooted by the wind. And that's the story of Lord Boar. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Does Lord Varaha Dev have planet in Vaikuntha?
What's that?
Does Varaha have planet in Vaikuntha?
Prabhupada said that the non-human forms of Krishna don't have planets in the spiritual world.
Also missing it.
That's what Prabhupada said. Prabhupada said only the human forms, human expansions like Lord Ram or other human-like expansions. And of course then you have the Vaikuntha planets where there's Lord Vishnu with 4 arms and the residents generally look like that too.
How about Lord Buddha?
Lord Buddha, it's interesting, is a Shaktavesh avatar. So he wouldn't have a planet in the spiritual world. Although he may have a place. Probably would say that one time that Lord Jesus Christ has a place in the spiritual world for his followers. So, but these are Shaktavesh avatars. There's different types of avatars. Some of them are directly God, and some of them are empowered by God. For example, we have His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, who is considered to be a Shaktavesh avatar. In other words, he's a, let's say, what we call a Jiva soul. That is in the same category as us in one sense, but someone who has been sent down from the spiritual world to carry out a specific mission. You know, they're missionaries from the spiritual world. That's what a Shaktavesh avatar is. And those persons don't have their own planets. I mean, obviously, Prabhupada doesn't have his own planet in the spiritual world. But Prabhupada has a place for his devotees in Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. So, any other questions? Today's Lord Boar's appearance, a very important day in the Vaishnava calendar. Any other questions? Any questions? No? Yeah.
So when personalities like Hiranyaksh and Hiranyakashipu fight, have this like big fight with the Lord, are they? What is kind of the deal in terms of their liberation? Is
Well,
one is vanquished by the Lord.
well, first of all, they're not ordinary demons.
Right.
So what happens is that they have to take another birth. They take another birth to fight with the Lord, like the 3 births we talked about. But if someone is an ordinary rascal, ordinary demon, they get killed by the Lord, they get liberated. Liberation in that particular sense can mean 1 or 2 things. If their attitude is completely inimical, then they go to the Brahmajyoti. The Brahmajyoti is the undifferentiated energy of Krishna, sometimes depicted as a white light around the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You understand what I mean? So there's a white light, the energy, and they enter into that for some time, and because it's not variegated, then after a while they fall out of it, because the soul naturally aspires for activities and variety. So that's the liberation that absolute demons get. And also it's the liberation that impersonalists get too. So you can actually see that demons and impersonalists get the same sort of result. And then, so if they have some tinge of bhakti, let's give the example of another demon who did. Her name was Putana. Putana, for those of you who don't know, was a demon who came to kill Krishna right after he was born, right after he appeared. And she was going to kill Krishna by giving Krishna poison on her breasts. Now, she had sort of a mixed motive, because in her previous life, she was the sister of Bali Maharaj, who was previously acting as a demon, related to Prahlad Maharaj. And when she first saw Krishna's incarnation, which occurred at that time, which was named Vamanadev, she felt motherly affection towards him. And she said, well, I wish he was my son. So when she saw Krishna cheat her brother, then that motherly affection became covered over by some animosity or anger. And she said, well, even if he is my son, I'll kill him. So next life, she took birth as Putana. So it was mixed. She had genuine love, mixed, very mixed love. She had genuine love. So when she took birth as Putana, she tried to kill Krishna, but at the same time, Krishna took away the demoniac spirit when he actually sucked her breast milk and sucked the poison out and sucked her life air at the same time. And all that was left was her bhakti. And so she went back to the spiritual world. But generally, when we talk about just liberation, it's the impersonal liberation. Or sometimes, liberation can mean just freedom from karma. Like the statement is that even if one chants Hare Krishna, by accident it's called Namabash, one is liberated. Or one goes to see the Rath Yatra ceremony of Lord Jagannath, one is liberated. Doesn't mean that one goes to the Brahmajyoti, and it doesn't mean necessarily one goes to the spiritual world either. It just means one is free of karma. So the word liberation means different things according to the context, for those of you who don't know what that means, where you find the word. Like many words are defined by where they are in a paragraph or sentence or in a story. That's just the nature of language. That words are not only defined by their own dictionary definition, but which may be 3 or 4 different definitions of a particular word, but where you find those words in a narration. So liberation can mean any of those things. Or it can also mean, let's say you put someone in jail and you let them out of jail. Okay, you're liberated now. Or someone say to someone, get out of here, you're liberated. So it just depends. But in this particular context, they were already liberated because they were doing a pastime for Krishna. And this, their getting cursed and falling down to the material world was all part of Krishna's arrangement. They never actually lost their liberated position, but they forgot it. Because Krishna wanted them to forget it. Just like under the influence of Yogamaya, which is the Lord's pastime potency, Krishna himself sometimes desires to forget that he is God, so he can enjoy himself. Like if you're always remembering you're God, there's no fun. Isn't it? I mean, if you get whatever you want, whenever you want, just by wanting it, it's a pretty boring life. I mean, it may sound exciting, right? If you say, I'll give you the benediction, you can get anything you want. It can get pretty boring. Except for all those people who are praying to you, that's pretty boring. Well, that's pretty boring too. There was once that movie, what was that name of the movie where a guy became God? Brian or something like that?
Yeah, Bruce Almighty.
Bruce Almighty. And he became God, and he was harassed by all the prayers that people were making to him. So people have this conception of God, and their conception of God is simply based upon what God does for them. You know, in other words, God's existence is defined by them. Whereas in the Vedic literatures and Krishna consciousness, our existence is defined by God. It's exactly the opposite. You know, we shouldn't define God exists for our benefit. Instead, we exist for God's benefit. And that's spiritual life. That's liberation right there. Okay? Any other interesting questions? No? Okay, so parikrama tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning. And for those of you who don't live right here, meet us at the Radhakund bus stop. Subji market? Or Kundeshwar Mat, you don't know where that is. Anyway, meet us at the Radhakund, you know where Radhakund bus stop is. At, so we leave here at 6:30, you know, 6:50, 6:55 in the morning. And we'll start the parikrama. What we're going to do tomorrow is go around to all the different places and explain each of the places, the main places at Radhakund, the story behind them, and the deities, and all that other nice things. It'll take about 3 or 4 hours to do that at Radhakund. So that should be exciting for everybody. Okay, we'll see everybody tomorrow. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Lord Varaha ki jai.